they thought they were out of the storm. They saw that little patch of sunlight and everybody was cheering, and then that fucking shit just got swallowed up, and then they, spoiler alert, they all fucking die at the end.
Welcome to Rogue Bogues, the basketball series. Another episode, wrap up on all the NBA playoffs. A lot going on, Pro. You been watching many of these games?
Yeah. Ironically enough, not the Indiana-Milwaukee game. Those games are almost unwatchable for me, but most of the other series, yeah, for sure.
That's on right now, so we'll get to that one a little bit later. There's 9 minutes left at time of recording. Pacers up 8 with a plethora of injuries for the Milwaukee Bucks. Let's start with the New York-Philly game, series, 3-1 to New York so far. I had Philly trying to steal this one as one of my underdogs, 4-2. Embiid comes back, obviously from that injury towards the end of the regular season. He still doesn't look like he's in great shape. I think the fourth quarters, he just really kind of capitulates, and now that's been talked about as a talking point for a lot of people. But, I mean, Jalen Brunson just absolutely amazing today anyway in that game 4. Just did a fantastic job and scoring 47 and just making clutch bucket after clutch bucket. So it's been a grindy series. I don't know if you saw game 2, Pro, but Philly should have won that game. I think they were up 5 with the ball. New York score. So up 3 with the ball. New York score up 3 with the ball. They can't get it in bounds properly. It bobbles. Nick Nurse was calling a timeout, which was interesting. The league actually apologized for it post the game, which cost them a big game in that series, that they missed the timeout call by Nick Nurse. Ball gets inbounded. Maxey falls over. They steal the ball. They shoot a 3, miss it. Offensive rebound, shoot a 3. They end up stealing that game. But what are your thoughts on this series so far?
It's interesting. Obviously, Brunson's still in the show. Embiid for 3 quarters is always pretty, dominating. And then he just had one of the biggest flops in fourth quarters in most of the series. Maxey's been good. It's been up and down. It's just been the Brunson show. And if it's not the Brunson show, for New York, like, they've got just a lot of guys they could spread it out to. DiVincenzo and Hart and, even Hartenstein, just playing hard with short rolls and screening hard and playing tough. Just like New York has a lot of momentum, a lot of ball movement, a lot of, making a lot of tough, gritty plays, where for Philly, it just seems like it's Embiid, Maxey, and then not enough from everybody else. I just think that, like, Tobias Harris, Oubre, they got to give a little bit more. But, it's, just one of those series. But Brunson's been great, and just watching how he operates and really dominating the series, in my opinion, and I think most other people's opinions as well.
Yeah, the Knicks much more balanced. There were 6 guys averaging double digits. Funnily enough, as you mentioned, Josh Hart, but Jalen Brunson, 33 a night with 9 assists and 5 rebounds. Josh Hart is their second leading scorer. 16.8 points, 12.8 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal and a block per night. Shooting 46% from 3. He's their best 3-point shooter at the moment. McBride obviously up there as well, 50% from 3. But then they've got OG, 13 points a night. McBride, almost 13 points a night. Hartenstein, 10.4. DiVincenzo, 10. So much more balanced than Philly, as you said. Philly, Embiid, 35 a night with 9 rebounds and 5 assists. Tyrese Maxey, 29, 7 assists and 5 rebounds. And then Oubre Jr., 12, and Lowry with 10.5. The rest falls off. Tobias Harris is that guy they need more from, though. He's close to a max guy, I believe. Is he close to? I think he's close to a max guy. Big money guy for them. And he's just fallen out of favor with Nurse. Like, that doesn't, not so much falling out of favor, just in that system, it just doesn't look right for him. And he's a streaky kind of player. He's a confidence player. When he gets rolling, he's good. But, his strengths years ago were elbow, posting up off the block, were kind of more his strengths. The game's moved away from that now. So now he's, obviously a stretch guy. Not shooting it that well from 3, 25%. So he's kind of hard to play for longer stretches. But yeah, I thought this series, I like I said, I had Philly just as trying to pick an underdog, but New York, I got to give them credit. They just look so much more in sync than Philly. Role players, guys kind of knowing their roles, happy with those roles, Philly, it just kind of seems like, if Embiid or Maxey are going to carry us, we're not going to be there. And, the conditioning for Embiid, reportedly, he said he had Bell's palsy leading into the series, couldn't see out of his eye. So you feel for him there, but the conditioning is always going to come back to haunt Embiid, I think. And being a superstar player, you gotta be able to carry your team in that fourth quarter. And we'll get to a stat later in useful or useless, but his fourth quarters historically have just not been great in playoff series. He'll end up finishing the night with big numbers generally, but those fourth quarters where they really need him, and I don't know, bro. Do you think it comes down to just legs and conditioning, not having it in the grind of an NBA game?
To me, Bogues, the great ones, it doesn't really matter. They find a way to do it. If it's conditioning, if it's just the guys that could really close series, win championships, and the Larry Birds, the Michael Jordans, the Kobe's, the guys like that could just find a way to do it. Now he's different. He's big and he's lumbering and all that, but at what point are we going to stop with the excuses for the guy? And not that we're giving excuses, but back in the day, if Jordan or Bird or Magic, if you told any of those types of guys, those champions and, true Hall of Fame, big time players, like, hey, this is what's holding you back from really being elite, they would go and do everything in their power to make that not a problem anymore. And we talk about Embiid every year about, staying healthy and all that, but the conditioning part and the fourth quarter part and being able to really step ahead of it. And he hasn't been able to do that. So I don't know what it is, Bogues. All I know is he's not producing. When you look at it, when you watch the film, when you look at the stats, the guy's not stepping up when he needs to, when his team needs to in the fourth quarter. Is he stepping up the first three quarters? Is he a go-to guy? Is he at times one of the best big men of all time when you watch him in certain situations? He's great in certain situations. But the great ones, the ones that we keep talking about that's remembered 30 years from now, those guys step up in the fourth quarter and they dominate in the fourth quarter, game in and game out. He just hasn't done that. So I don't know exactly what it is. All I know is I read that fucking stat sheet in the fourth quarter and it's like almost like a fucking box of Cheerios. It's just zeros across the board. And the guy's got to do better. And that's it. That's what it comes down to.
Especially when they compare, he's an MVP candidate year in, year out. And then obviously the easy one to compare with is Jokic. Jokic gets it done in the fourth. And it might not be scoring. It might not be, but he's people say that he's over what Jokic is kind of carrying a few pounds, but he gets it done. He's in shape. He's up and down. You looked at even kind of the things that Embiid did late in that game today where they lost, became frustrated, not making shots, and then just started doing silly things. He tried to double team Brunson. He picked up Brunson full court. I don't know if you saw that play, but Joel Embiid picked up Brunson full court. Don't know why. And then ended up, the team was out of balance behind him. What the hell are you doing? Get back to your man. Then two guys ran off Brunson. Brunson gets an easy floater late in the game to kind of seal it. Stuff like that. That's kind of been their MO. And that was Ben Simmons' fault a couple of years ago. And now it's, he's got to really prove himself in the fourth quarter, especially being that MVP candidate. But it looks as though they got to try to salvage something in Philly to try and at least get this to 6 if they can. Orlando, Cleveland, this is a swingy series as you can get. I think Cleveland probably got a little comfortable after their first two wins in Cleveland, defended home court pretty well, pretty well in control of both those games. They weren't blowouts, but they did a pretty good job of just dictating tempo. And first game they win by 14, second game they win by 10, and Orlando not getting out of the 80s, just couldn't score the ball in Cleveland. They scored 83 and 86 respectively. And you think, okay, Cleveland only has to go and get one in Orlando, and Orlando just beat the absolute shit out of them. Game 3, 121 to 83. So Orlando finds their offense, and then 112 to 89 in game 4. So kind of bipolar series. Something that we probably wouldn't have picked leading into the series. Franz Wagner's been their best. I mean, for Orlando, he's been sensational for him. 21, 8 rebounds, 4.3 assists, made big shots when they needed in that game 3 and game 4 just to keep him at bay. Playing really good basketball right now, 39% from 3, 50% from the field. Banchero obviously is their other guy, 21, 7 and 4. But a good balance beyond that. You know, they got Suggs with 14, Isaac's come in and averaged 9, Wagner brother, Maurice has 8 a night, you know, Fultz has 6. So they're really balanced, and it seems like Mosley's going to the bench and trying different lineups. Cleveland, I mean, Donovan Mitchell was sensational in the first 2 games and then kind of, you know, shot it pretty poorly in the next 2. He's averaging 21, but Jared Allen's probably been their best. He's been their best player, I think, in the series, in 4 at least. You know, he's at 17, 14, and a block a night, and obviously doing all the dirty work for them inside. But they're going to need more from Mobley, Garland, LeVert. Those guys are going to have to really step up. Max Strus hasn't come out and shot it that well in this series. He's shooting 17% from 3. So they got to find one of those next 3 names I mentioned has to come out and give them more. Mobley's hasn't been horrible. I mean, he's 14 and 7, but probably need a little bit more from him. But yeah, bipolar series, bro.
Yeah, I mean, Cleveland came out swinging the first 2, and just like you say, got their ass kicked the next 2. Donovan Mitchell has to show more, for sure. I think he's shooting 11 for 30 in his last 2. And look, when you're saying, well, it's not just him, but you're right, it is him. He's the best player. He's the guy that, again, just like Embiid, you know, his reputation of not showing up in fourth quarters when they need him. Donovan Mitchell has been really lacking in the playoffs in the last few years. And this is something that he's going to have to work out. And, you know, right now you're in the thick of things because they're not playing great all year. They've been up and down most of the year. You expect them because of their experience and just so, you know, just what they bring to the game as far as Cleveland, they should be able to beat an inexperienced Orlando team for the most part. You know, and it's just, it's just what it is. And he's got to show more for sure. Jared Allen is picking up the slack. He's doing the best he can. You know, Wagner's been, you know, really good. Banchero's been, you know, up and down, but for the most part, pretty good for Orlando. And hey, look, they're fighting and they're protecting home court and they're doing what they're supposed to do. But Cleveland is just not showing it. And it starts with Mitchell. You know, because those other guys are decent. Don't get me wrong, Mobley and Strus and the other guys that they have, but he's going to have to show up and he's going to have to step up because he's clearly their best player. And when you know, even if it's on the road, you got to be able to step up. And at some point, he's got to just say, "Look, it's got to be on me. It's got to be on my shoulders, and I got to do better." Because if he's not the guy and he's not really killing it, there's really nobody, in my opinion, on that team that could really do a lot. Like Allen could give you an energy, he could roll to the rim, lobs, you know, rebound really well. Mobley could score in the post, face up, do his thing, but you know, you got a couple of guys that might be able to make shots a little bit, but he's the guy. And he's been very underwhelming in the last 2.
Yeah, Garland's the other guy that needs to step up for him.
Oh, Garland.
Yeah, Garland's the other one. Yeah, he's the other guard that. But Donovan's, the usage is going more towards Donovan. Garland hasn't been horrible with 12 points at decent, he's shooting 40% from 3, 42 from the field with 6 assists. He's their leading assist getter in this series. But yeah, Donovan Mitchell, if he's averaging 21 points at 42% field goal percentage, they're not going to win the series. He needs to get that to mid-20s and at a better clip. And they need a little bit more from those role players. Allen's been doing what he does. I think he's been their best player, and you can't really do much more. He's not a highly skilled guy, but rolling, protecting the rim, rebounding, he's been sensational. But this one has potential to go 7. It's going to be interesting to see where the adjustments go for both teams. Usually, once home court's been settled by both teams and it's 2-2, you start seeing some kind of probably some coaches take a bit more gambles at this point. Potentially maybe even after a game 5, but this one I think has a potential to go 7, which is good to see. Next series we have your Celtics versus the Miami Heat. Jimmy Butler out, MCL strain. You thought, here we go again. They're out of the reins. They got no chance in this series. Boston, kind of get by in that series in game 1, kind of relatively unscathed. It was never really that close. And then you get to game 2 and Miami just do it again. They just somehow, some way managed to steal a win in Boston. Boston, I mean, their home record was impeccable during the regular season. And Miami come in and get a win somehow, some way. And then, You go to Miami. Look, I don't think it's going to happen this year, Pro. With Jimmy out, I love the way Miami don't quit and they play well together, and you can't doubt Spo. But I think being this shorthanded, it's going to be tough, especially what we saw in game 3 in Miami when things kind of grinded down to playoff basketball where you needed a bucket getter or someone you could be comfortable with, which is usually Jimmy. They don't have a whole lot there. They can kind of play in the flow and be grindy in first, second, third quarters, but I think in the fourth, they just couldn't get that lead back down to a respectable level to have a chance in that game, and the Celtics just absolutely beat the crap out of them in game 3. So it'll be interesting to see which Boston shows up in game 4. I don't think Jimmy's, from what I've read, I don't think he's a chance of being back in this series. I think he's going to be out, for a little while. Maybe if they progress, which I don't think they will. But I see Boston, obviously. I don't see a kind of reincarnation of what happened last season, bro.
Yeah, I mean, for what happened last season, for the most part, Miami had most of their guns, that they could use, and most of their weapons. Now without Jimmy Butler and, without Rozier, it's really tough offensively. Tyler Hero just doesn't, look, he can give you a spark like he did in game 2, but he's an up and down scorer. Like, he's a very streaky player. And if you're depending on him, look, Bam Adebayo could do the best that he can. He'll give you effort on the offensive and defensive end, give you energy, try to protect the rim the best he can, and score inside and face up, handle the ball and all that. But they just don't have enough weapons right now without Butler and Rozier. If you had Rozier, maybe it's even though he didn't play great, while he's been in Miami after the trade deadline, after the acquisition, but like, at least he can give you a little bit of athleticism, a little bit of scoring, but they just don't have that. And yeah, I mean, look, they had a great game 2, tied it up, look great, look good, but I think they just got Boston on a bad night. Porzingis was bad. They just didn't have it. But then you look at them in game 3 and, Jaylen Brown killed them. Tatum didn't play great, but, Derek White just showed up, and their defense was really stifling. And they really, Miami really couldn't get anything going. And they got great sparks from like Peyton Pritchard and Al Horford off the bench. And just too many weapons. They just played too fluid. I don't think anybody's going to mess with Boston, to be honest with you, in the whole East. But, sometimes they don't show, and, they'll slip a game here and there. But if they don't get to the finals, something's, if they don't get to the conference finals at least. But I could see this team going to the finals and see what happens from there. But Miami, I just don't think they have enough. They don't have enough shooting. They don't have enough consistency. Like, it's just too much for Bam on his shoulders. And like I said, I just don't think Hero could, do it throughout a whole series, game in and game out, which they don't really have a lot of room for error. If they had Butler and they had Rozier, then, everybody else moves back. And then, they could play bad, like the starters could play badly a little bit and poorly for a quarter, and then the bench could really bring them through. But now your depth chart's really stretched out, and I just don't think anybody that they really have deep in their rotation can do a lot for them. I think Love's washed. Thomas Bryant can't give you anything. I don't think Patty's going to give you enough. They just don't have enough at that end of the bench, where if they had those 2 players, obviously it's a different series. I think this will be, 4-1. Probably 4-1. Maybe they could steal another one, but I really don't think so. I think they're done. I think it's 5. I think it's a big 4-1.
Yeah, the only thing is, I guess Boston get game 4, 3-1 going home. That's the one you could see them dropping again, just because you kind of, you got to still beat Miami. Like, they're as shorthanded as they are. You got to come and play the right way. If you kind of just try to cruise control through them, it's not one of those teams. This isn't kind of Indiana, Milwaukee, where Milwaukee's so shorthanded right now that Indiana can kind of sleepwalk through that series, I think, for the rest of the series, if these injuries are what they are and they're out for the series in Giannis and Lillard. But, yeah, I mean, look, Miami, Adebayo, 21-8 so far. I mean, Tyler Hero at 16 and 6 assists, and then it's kind of falls down from there. Duncan Robinson again out of the lineup, which has kind of been strange. I felt like he played well in stretches during the regular season again, and then he was in and out. He's been, Patty took his minutes last game. I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to go to him maybe again and try to get some more shooting out there, because I just don't think they had enough offense last game. And then touching on Boston, I think that I spoke off air regarding this. I think they can afford to have flutters offensively now. When you got Drew Holiday and Derek White out there, you can consistently get stops, and Porzingis has been pretty good in protecting the paint and the rim in this series. So their defense, I think, is a notch up from last season. So I think they're going to have issues. You know, Tatum's averaging 24, so is Brown. Derek White 16, Porzingis 14. They're going to have times where Brown and Tatum just kind of float about and aren't really, you know, making shots for them, and the offense kind of goes downhill. But yeah, for the most part, they're defensively, I think, is where they're gonna be really tough. Especially, I agree with you. I really don't see anyone in the Eastern Conference messing with them. New York might be a grindier series, but other than that, I mean, Indiana would be interesting just to see the fast pace, but Indiana just don't play enough defense for my liking in those grind out type fourth quarters in the playoffs. So that's that series. Let's go to Indiana and Milwaukee, which is almost up. I think there's a couple of minutes left at time of recording, and the Pacers I think are up, you know, by 12. Is it, Trent? Something like that. So
yeah, 17.
Yeah. So unless something absolutely goes downhill, but yeah, Lillard questionable for the rest of the series with Achilles strain. Giannis, I haven't heard much on him, but a calf strain. They said on air today that he has got out of the Alter G running, which is a treadmill that lightens your impact by percentages, so you can run on basically a cloud at 100%, and then the lower you get, less resistance you get, the more resistance goes on your body. And he just got out of that, so that's not a great sign. That just means that he's probably back to normal court jogging at full weight. And then, as we know, pro, you've got the progression, so you'll probably do that for a couple of days. If there's no issues of swelling or soreness, then you go up to maybe 80% running, and then you got to introduce movement and pivots and slides and all that shit, and then you got to go, you know, to a phase where you're 5-on-0, then 1-on-1, 2-on-2, 3-on-3. So I just don't see him coming back this series with that. Potentially second series if they get through, which I don't think they will. Today's game, you know, really important game 4 for Milwaukee, and you got Pat Bev gets a tee within the first 3 or 4 minutes for doing the too small. Bobby Portis Jr. gets ejected in the first quarter. Huge out for Milwaukee. Like, once that happens, you're kind of scratching your head thinking, man, like, what are you doing? Gets in a little scuffle, pushes, I think it was Neesmith, or Nembard. Is it Nembard? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, Nembard.
Nembard was one, I think it might have been Nembard. Pushes him and then follows up with a slap to the face, gets thrown out, and you're just thinking, surely, you know, if you're Doc Rivers, you talk to those two guys, especially before the game, and say, look, you know, you guys aren't the 15, 20-minute agitators off the bench now. Like, we need, you know, we're short. Don't do stupid shit early in the game. And I think the Portis thing cost them being in this game. They were in the game for most of this game. Milwaukee were down 17 with 1:40. And Indiana shot the piss out of it from 3. I think they're 20 from 40 or something like that from 3. But if you have Portis in there, I think it gives you another option to score. He's been really good for them in stretches when Giannis has been out during the regular season. But they just don't have enough, and I just don't see them getting game 5 even in Milwaukee. Whether Dame plays or not, who knows? But I think we both picked Indiana in this series, even if Dame was playing, and I think it's going to stay that way.
Yeah, I mean, Milwaukee punched him in the face first game, and then, you know, from that moment on, Indiana just sort of settled in, took it, and just cruised in the last few games. I just think that there's just too much. Milwaukee's just missing too much. Without Lillard, without Giannis, they got almost no chance. You know, Middleton's still on one leg, even though, you know, he had a big time performance last game, setting the game in overtime, you know, with that big time shot. But, you know, Indiana's got too much. Siakam's been dominating, you know, averaging like 30 and 11 in the series, and he's just been really good. He's been their steady force. You know, Miles Turner's played well. You know, Andrew Nembhard's played well, played hard. Halliburton's played okay, not great. Like, again, still trying to find his form, but they just have too many weapons. They just keep running at you. They got really good role players. TJ McConnell attacks you. You know, I picked these guys in 5 because, you know, even if they had Giannis, I just didn't see it. Something about Milwaukee is just missing. You know, now you got Lopez as your number 1 player. Portis has, done, he's done well in the series, but, you know, Dame's played well. It's just not enough. You know how it is, Bogues, like in the playoffs when you see it. I've seen it since the 1980s with like, the Lakers versus Detroit. Like they'll come out swinging a quarter and a half, 2 quarters, maybe 2.5. They'll stay with them. And you're like, okay, but you could sort of see it that they're starting to be stuck in mud a little bit. You could see that they just don't have enough offense. If teams are making shots, it's great, but like just don't have enough. And the other team's just going to start being, they're just going to start, grinding their teeth and say, we're just going to go to our weapons, and they just don't have enough. And I just don't think Milwaukee has enough. Too many injuries, missing too many players. Even if they didn't, it's just, I don't know. They've been clunky most of the year, so yeah.
They can't get stops either. They're not great defensively. Not saying Indiana are great, but they have that high-powered offense. Even today, this is a game forward, kind of do or die essentially for Milwaukee, and they're giving up. I think Obi Toppin had two out of 3 plays in succession were running the floor on makes. Milwaukee make it. They inbounded it to Halliburton, lob dunk for Toppin. Like you can't have the other team take the ball out of the net and run it straight back for a dunk. And that happened twice in a minute, and you're just like, that's inexcusable stuff in the playoffs. And they play a really big tempo, high tempo. You can see a few of the bigs. Lopez looks really tired towards the end of this game because Indiana goes small a lot. They put Toppin at the 5 at times, Siakam at the 5 at times, and make you kind of adjust, and they just run. And that will be an interesting series with Boston, I think, if that does eventuate, just because I think that they play different styles of basketball. I think Indiana can cause some issues over a series. I don't think so, but they might. They'll push one of these really good teams to a 7-game series. But yeah, Milwaukee just not enough. I think with Giannis, with a healthy Milwaukee, still going Indiana. I don't know. I think it's more of a coin flip at that point if both teams are healthy. But I agree with you. Milwaukee under Doc Rivers, it's just been a shit show of a season. Hasn't fit well. They don't look happy. The guys don't look engaged. Whereas, you see in Miami or someone like that, even shorthanded, they're still going to give you a bit more than what Milwaukee are doing shorthanded. So I think this one's done in 5 in Milwaukee. Just the injuries, you can't make up for that. Siakam, 30 a night with 11 rebounds, absolutely killing it. Miles, this is actually pre-game 4, by the way, listeners. So these numbers will change a little bit, but 22 and 8 for Miles Turner, shooting the ball real well from 3. Milwaukee generally in that drops defense with Lopez packing the paint. So he's broke 3 and he's averaging 8 3-point attempts a game because of it. As you said, Nembhard, 14 a night. Halliburton hasn't been horrible, but hasn't been great. 13 points, 12 assists, and 7 rebounds with 3 turnovers. So not horrible. Still dictating the tempo for them. And Nesmith, 10.3 points a game, and the rest are kind of balanced for Milwaukee. You got Lillard, who was averaging 32 before he was out before tonight's game. Middleton, 26, so he's found some form late in this season after the injuries and all that kind of stuff. Brook Lopez, 15 a night. Bobby Portis, 15, 13, and an assist. So, yeah, I just don't see it from Milwaukee. All right, moving on to the West. OKC and New Orleans. I thought New Orleans would steal a game or two. I really did. I didn't think they'd win this series, but I thought they've got a lot of length and size, and they've got a lot of kind of, when Zion's out, I think they've played some pretty good basketball historically, and they have a lot of length and size to just have janky lineups out there potentially. But credit to OKC. So do OKC. They have a lot of length and different lineups they go to, and I felt New Orleans should have won game 1. I don't know if you saw that game, Pro, but New Orleans had control of that game. OKC came back and stole it late, and since then it's been a wash. It's been 30-point win in game 2, 124-92, and then 106-85 in game 3, and it's just so many weapons for OKC. They have SGA is obviously the head of their snake offensively, but they have a lot of different guys that doing different things at different times for them. SGA 28 points a night with 5 assists or 6 assists and just under 5 rebounds. Jalen Williams actually their second leading scorer with 20 a night. Chet Holmgren 15. Josh Giddey 12, 5, and 4. Dort's averaging 11. Just really well balanced team. They can hurt you in a lot of different ways.
I agree. Game 1 was really surprising. Overtime, I thought New Orleans was going to steal it. Kelly played great. Trey Murphy played great. Herb Jones didn't shoot it really well, but I thought they took advantage of Valanciunas being, that much bigger and stronger than Chet Holmgren. You talked about it. You hear about it all throughout the trade deadline to the end of the season that,
no size.
That size and strength that the teams are going to take advantage of that. And they did a little bit. I thought Valanciunas was very effective at times. He had 20 rebounds in game one. And he just sort of, every rebound, I think he had like 9 offensive rebounds throughout the night, and he was really effective. And I thought that like they were going to take advantage of that, and they were going to sort of piggyback on it, but they just really haven't. Sometimes you see that when a team punches a team in the mouth in one game, they might win, they might not, or be close, and then the other team just sort of adjusts for it. Mark Diagonat got Coach of the Year for a good reason. The guy just makes great adjustments. I thought the team made great adjustments throughout the series, and it's really not much of one. You've seen this before. First game close, and the next next couple have been blowouts, and they've adjusted well. And for Oklahoma City, they just play tough. They play well together. Obviously SGA leads the pack, and Holmgren plays well, and Jalen Williams does his thing, and Dort's sort of that tough antagonizer without just sort of defending and playing hard, making an open shot. Their bench is always energized, ready to go. Isaiah Joe, Kenrich Williams, even Hayward will give you some minutes. I really like Cason Wallace, their rookie. So they play well. They play together. I thought that after game one, they really settled into the series, and they're not really looking back on this one.
Yeah, CJ McCollum hasn't been great neither, and that's been a problem. He's kind of playoffs haven't historically been that good. The last couple of seasons, he's averaging 17 a night at 37% and 22% from three, just not getting it done. Ingram hasn't been great this series, 16 and 5 a night, but has Dort on him for most of the game, which isn't, and Valanciunas. Look, I don't think the big thing is going to hurt OKC too much. I think the only teams it's going to hurt them against would be if they somehow manage to make the finals and play Philly or Denver, right? They're the two teams. Holmgren, I think, will have his hands full with Jokic. Like most people do anyway. So it's kind of like, their style of play is we'll be bringing Jokic out of the paint, but that'll be the only one. I think a Valanciunas type's not going to really move the needle too much when you're playing him, and we saw that. He dominated a little bit in the paint in game one, but 2 and 3 has really been a non-factor. So this could be a potential sweep series. Not sure if we get past to game 4 there. It just seems OKC have full control, and credit to them. It's their first real postseason run with this group, and we all thought, not all of us, but that they'd had their ups and downs throughout a playoff series. They've come in and absolutely dominated for 2 out of 3 of these games and stole the first one, which you got to steal them every now and then in the playoffs, and they're playing some good ball. So they'll hopefully get some rest if they wrap it up. But yeah, OKC, just great balance. 6 players averaging double digits. Tough to beat. Clippers Dallas just finished a couple of hours ago. Don't know if you saw that one, Pro, but I watched the fourth quarter of that one. So the Clippers up 31 in the second quarter, absolutely piling on Dallas, and Dallas make a huge run. I think they took the lead by a point or two, up 2 actually, and then Paul George hitting an absolutely big 3 in the what was that? Couple of minutes left.
Yeah, maybe like 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Hits a big kind of fadeaway 3. They're trying to post him up and knocks that down. And Kawhi injury has been interesting, Pro. It seems like the Clippers have actually played better without him to an extent, because I think when he's been out there, he's been a bit ginger and just hasn't looked a bit more clunky with him in the lineup. Harden taking over in the fourth quarter, looked like his old self. They put Luka in. They try to put Luka in everything. Now Luka made some big shots. Was great offensively, but I think at the start of this series, I mentioned that we'll probably see the Clippers trying to really target Luka Doncic defensively, and he hasn't been great defensively. There were patches where he was okay in game 3, but game 4 they were just all out getting him involved in stuff, and they were trying to, Luka was doing his best to stay out of any ball screen action so he wouldn't get switched onto James. But every time he got switched onto James got 2 feet in the paint and hit that floater. So I think overall in this series it's 2-2. This is a potential 7. It's going to be a swingy series, and it's obvious to most people that know basketball. It's a dar moment, but the best defensive team is going to win this series, I think. I think they both have great offensive players and tough offensive shot makers that can make tough shots in crunch time. I think it's going to be your Hardens, your Doncic's, your guys that are not great defenders. Can we get them to just an average level where they're bought in and really tough and solid and physical and just trying to be a little bit better defensively? Whichever team figures that out first, I think will win the series, bro.
Yeah, it's been a weird series, to be honest with you. The Kawhi Leonard thing really impacts it. He's got to shake the rust off at some point, because if you get past this series, you're going to need him. You're not going to be able to, beat these teams as you go deeper into the playoffs without the guy. And the problem is when you play him now, he's just too out of sync. Now, I don't know if it's the rust. I don't know if it's just the knee can't respond, but he's been terrible both games that he played. And it's just, he's lethargic offensively. He'll give you a couple of finishes here and there, but they played better without him. They to give the minutes where you got to sort of, try to get him involved in games instead of giving 1 minute to Coffee and 1 minute to Man. You put him out there, he's just not being able to help. But if it's a rust thing, you're going to have to give him, you're going to have to give him enough minutes. You can't just run on a treadmill and expect like he's going to stop being his old self once you insert him into a playoff series, if it's the next one or going forward. Throughout the series, like Luka and Kyrie has been, for the most part, really, really good. Obviously, I think Lively and Gafford's given him good minutes. PJ Washington, gave him some, good spots in their wins. I just don't think that, today's game, in game 4, it was the Paul George show in the first half. I want to say he had like 26 in the first half, and then he just disappeared most of the game after that, except a big shot at the end. James Harden was great getting in the paint, making plays. Zubac was really good early in the series. Game 1, I think he had like 20 and 13. And, I was joking to my friends calling him, Hakeem Zubacuan, because, they took advantage of Gafford just posting him up, using his size, using his skill, and they sort of went away from that, in the games, past that. I think his size and his skill level is really good, gives us another player. Westbrook's just been, I don't know, he's been one of those guys that just, Westbrook sort of reminds me of Ron Artest at the end of his career in LA the last year, where he can't really shut anybody down. He gets frustrated. He tries to yuck the game up. Offensively, doesn't give you a lot. He gives you fight, don't get me wrong. He gives you toughness, tries to yuck the game up, but it ends up sort of costing him. He gets ejected, in game 3, really cost him. Today, just offensively, he's just not giving you a lot. He does compete, but, he's just not giving them a lot. But Norman Powell's been stepping up huge for them, scoring, be able to make threes on the move, straight line drives, playing hard. He's really stepped up in Kawhi's absence. And I just think that they're in a pickle, because you got to play Kawhi if he can play in the playoffs, which I'm not a doctor. I have no idea. I have no prior knowledge or any information about if he, how that knee is. But if it's just a rust thing, you're going to have to play him just to get him going. Because now you're inserted into that next round in the playoffs. You got to be able to play him. But he's ruining right now. He ruins sort of any type of flow your team 100%. Has. So
that's been the issue with the Clippers. Yeah. It's the constant issue. It's the flow thing. It's just like he's here and then he's not. Then PG's out. Then he's not. Then Harden's out. Then it's just like they've done a pretty good job in the regular season, this season, of trying to fix that. Right. Do you start Kawhi on the bench, bro? He's averaging this series. He's averaging 12 a night with 8 rebounds. Hasn't made a 3, I believe. Yeah, he's 0% on 2.5 attempts. 2 games only, so small sample size. But do you take the pressure off him and have him play 15 to 20 off the bench, keep that group starting because they've got a nice flow now. They won a big game on the road. Go to game 5. If he's going to play game 5, start him on the bench and have him lead that second unit, where you go to him and utilize him as much as you can in that second unit for 15 and only playing 15, and then maybe shake the rust off that way. We're going to go to you in an 8-minute spurt, take you out, and we're going to come back to you again, another 8-minute spurt in the second half. You get 15 to 20. Do you go that route? Because I think having him out there with James, Paul, it's kind of like, okay, we've got 2 other stars that are balling right now. Now we're trying to find Kawhi and get him going and get him feeling good in the middle of a series that you need to win a game.
That's a really good point. I mean, the way they're playing him in the 2 games that he's played, it didn't work. It was just clunky. He has no lift in that knee, can't really shoot, doesn't give him any perimeter offense. Defensively, he was okay, I thought. And I thought, like I said, he made a few good finishes and things, but you're going to have to play him if he's able to play. I agree with you. Maybe bring him off the bench and
just till he gets healthy, like not forever, but just
for sure.
Take the pressure off,
Yeah. And I do agree with that. And then for Dallas, look, Dallas has played well. They don't have Tim Hardaway Jr. I don't know how much longer he's out for, but again, I think him out actually gives them a little bit better sort of a better offense and better flow, better shot selection. Now you get Exum playing a little bit more and Green playing more, and just sort of they could settle in. They got really good shot selections. They're more efficient. They don't put the points up that Hardaway can and sort of in short bursts, but also Hardaway could shoot you out of some things too. So I think they're playing well. Like they know their team. They got Luka and Kyrie. Gafford and Lively are going to be in pick and rolls all night. Washington spots up, Jones spots up for straight line drives and cuts and things like that. Luka finds guys, Kyrie finds guys, and both those guys could really finish. But I do think that the Clippers, I thought that they were going to be handicapped without Leonard. It seems like they're handicapped with them, with playing them. But they, in my opinion, if they continue to play Leonard the way they play him, they're not going to win the series. If they don't play him, I really do think that they'll beat Dallas just because they're doing a good job defensively when those guys get to play. When Mann plays more and Coffey plays more rather than playing Leonard. So it's an interesting deal. Westbrook, I think Westbrook's got to sort of find the happy medium of yucking the game up, and sort of being physical and getting people pissed versus losing his shit and getting tossed. Like he's got to do a little bit better with that, but it's a good series. It's got some fight. There's not a lot of fight in the Western Conference series wise. A lot of these guys, these things are blowouts. So it's interesting how it's gone. I think Mason Plumlee's giving the Clippers a really good boost as far as rebounding, running the floor, finishing inside. So yeah, I mean, it's been an entertaining 4 games for sure.
James Harden, 26, 7 assists, 4 rebounds. Paul George, 21, 5 and 5. And then Zubac, 16 and 10 a night. Kawhi with 12, Norman Powell with 10 a night. And then the Mavericks, the issue they have with Hardaway Jr. out is that not much scoring off the bench. That means you got to leave one of Luka or Kyrie in at all times. Luka with 29, 10 and 9, let's call it, and Kyrie with 29, 6 and 5. PJ Washington, their next best with 12.3, and then it goes single digits from there. The Aussie contingent hasn't played a lot. Josh Green, 15.5 minutes a game for 3.5 points, and Dante Exum only 9 minutes a game for just under a point and shooting 9% from the field. So he hasn't really been in the rotation, mainly some garbage stints, but they're going to have to look to find a little bit more from their bench, Dallas, I think. Find a little bit of scoring from somewhere else if they can, just to take the pressure off Doncic and Irving for the most part. But this will be a good one. I think it's got every chance of going 7, probably the most entertaining series in the Western Conference, in my opinion. I agree with that. LA and Denver, death taxes and the Lakers losing close ones went up big versus Denver, Pro. This series could, I mean, not easily, but it could be 3-1 the other way, Pro. Like I felt the Lakers, they had control of both those first 2 games in stints where they had, and it was then all of a sudden a bad turnover for a 3, and then they foul Urquic, whatever it was, right? Took Murray to hit a buzzer beater to win one of them. So this is, I think, closer than the 3-1 score indicates, in my opinion. But yeah, Denver's just so poised and good. Like they get down 10, 12, 14, and there's no panic. There's no, you don't see guys bitching at each other, or they're just kind of cool, calm, collected. They get the ball back to Joker or Murray. They get through their sets. They make some stuff. I mean, I think Porter Jr. has been pretty good. We do talk about him. We have the last couple of years. I think his assist to shot rate was something outrageous, wasn't it? But it takes some bad shots. But he's made some big ones for him in this series. Like Lakers have made a few runs, and he'll make one of those threes, and so much so he's their second leading scorer for the series with 22 and averaging just under 10 rebounds. So he's done a fantastic job. He's shooting 44% from three and 53% from the field. Jokic, I mean, how about this, bro? 29, 15, and 10 for the series. Offensively just being great. And then Murray with 21, 7, and 5 rebounds. Rumored to be out for Game 5, bro. Game 5 with a calf strain. Now, who knows where this goes? They're saying he's questionable. Calf strains are a tough one. Do Denver play with house money up 3-1, going back to Denver and say, we're going to, even if he's 50-50 to play, we're just going to sit him, try to wrap this up at home, which we should. It's at home. If not, we get him ready for Game 6 in LA? Or do you say, shit, no, we don't want to give the Lakers a sniff and have them get momentum? That's the chess game that a lot of teams in the NBA playoffs are going through with injuries, right? We just spoke about Kawhi and this and that. It's where do you roll the dice? Do you buy an extra game? Do you not buy an extra game? Does it change momentum in the series and then put pressure back on you? Like, there's all these things coaches and trainers have to think about. And as you know, pro, from being involved with teams, it's, the coach going to the trainers, and the trainers have one point of view more from the medical side, and the coach is like, my job is on the fucking line. I need to play, I want to win this series. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of intangibles that we, as people that are outside of the NBA right now, don't know about, or people that haven't worked there don't know about. That's not as simple as just like they're out or they're in. There's a lot of things that go into it. But Anthony Davis for the Lakers probably has been a monster in this series. He's been absolutely sensational. 30 points, 16 rebounds, 4 assists. I think he's been absolutely dominant on both ends of the floor. Just continues to be consistently in the mix for them, and historically in some of these series in the past, he'd have 3 or 4 games where he'd be absolutely dominant, and then 3 or 4 where he wouldn't. And he's been really good in this series. LeBron, 27 and 6 with 8 assists. Austin Reeves, their next best, with 16, and D'Angelo Russell, again issues with D'Angelo Russell, in and out of the lineup, was benched. Was pouting, sitting outside of their timeout, so they're dealing with all that again. Not the best if you go into best thing to do if you're going into free agency, pro. But he's a bit of a hothead there. And then Aaron Gordon's been pretty solid, just playing off the ball, just getting those. He had 5 dunks, I think, in Game 3 from just hanging out in that dunker. So a prime example of a guy who's happy to take a role and done a pretty good job. Last game, Game 4, wasn't great, but this is 3-1, pro. Do you see the Lakers stealing Game 5 if there's no Murray?
It depends on what type of Lakers team shows up. They're not shooting it great. I think their best action is to obviously put LeBron and AD into pick and rolls and handoffs. I think that Denver's not doing a great job, a great job getting to AD quick enough on rotations where, they're just attacking the rim. They're not shooting from 3, very well. Like, I think Russell, Prince, 35, 33, 36 for LeBron. AD's been dominant inside. I think you have to really dedicate yourself to attacking the rim. You attack the rim. Now, if they do try to rotate and put 2 on the ball and then rotate to AD quicker, now you have other people on the perimeter that can get more open looks. And I think that Denver's had a hard time with that. But, for as good as AD and LeBron are, look, I mean, they were down 3. They're down 3-0. They stole one last game. They played well. Don't get me wrong. The D'Angelo Russell thing, I've never been a Russell guy. I just think that he's not a good teammate. I don't think he's a good. He's a decent player, but a lot of the other shenanigans that he pulls is just, I'm just over it for sure. He had that one good year in Brooklyn, but for the most part, just not a fan. You see what happened on the bench or whatever. And again, no one knew what he was doing. Was he on? People said he was eating. Somebody said he was on the phone. Who cares? I don't really care. But I think for Denver's side, with the Murray deal, look, Reggie Jackson played, a starting role for a while when Murray was out this year. So I think if you put Jackson in the starting lineup for a game, give him some rest, especially if you think he can come back 90% or more for the next game, if he's going to miss this one. So I would probably just go with the Jackson, starting Jackson, bumping everybody up, and then seeing what you get. To be honest with you, I don't think Murray's playing great anyway. He's shooting 38% from the field, 20 from the three. Shot selection has been really rough. And, look, Jokic has been dominating. Porter's been good coming off those pin downs, those spot up shots, those, straight line drives. He's been good. Their bench has been, solid. Gordon had that 29 and 15 game. Really has been silent for the most part after that. But, I think everybody could step up their role. Look, they're a championship team. They play well together. If Murray plays or not, it is what it is. I think they're just the next guy's going to step up. But for the Lakers, it just seems, even when they played well, they won. They're worried about LeBron cussing out Ham on the bench for not, or whoever he cussed out for not challenging the call. You got Russell's deal. I don't know if they're going to put something together.
Yeah, the refs, they blame the refs as well, which you don't see often. You don't see a Laker team blaming the refs because usually they've got the purple and yellow underneath their referee stripes. So it's
without question,
rare to see that.
Without question.
But yeah, so do you think it wraps up in Denver?
I think it so what? They got one more in LA, is it?
No,
or they got Denver now.
Game 5 in Denver with no Murray.
Yeah,
potentially.
I think they could still win even without Murray. Okay. Now the thing is, statistically, I haven't looked it up, but from what from what people told me in the past, like Game 7s on the road in the playoffs, they don't really fare very well for the away team.
Game 5s or Game 7s?
What's up?
Game 5s or
Game 7s? Game 7. So like if they lose in Denver, even if LA wins, 2 in a row, then you got Game 7 in Denver. Yeah. So look, for me, I always try to look ahead. And some people look the opposite way with this. But I think if you could rest Murray where that's not going to be a problem. Or instead of rolling the dice and then he re-injures it, even if you win, now you're dealing with that the rest of the playoffs. Maybe you could sort of nip it in the butt now, get him some rest, maybe wrap up LA in a game or two, and then he gets extra rest waiting on the next playoff series. I'm not sure. But I think it's going to be a tough one. I do think they wrap it up in Denver, to be honest. And then even if they don't and they rest Murray, I think they're all set. They're either going to they'll either take it in LA or they'll go to Game 7 and win. So I don't really see a problem with Denver in this series.
Yeah, I mean, they'll hopefully. I think they will buy some time for Murray with a calf, but we'll see. We'll see the games tomorrow, so we'll see how that all goes. All right, last one: Phoenix versus Minnesota. That I apologize. I picked Phoenix. I try to outsmart everyone and go 4-2 because I thought the big three would actually show up and be half decent. But geez, they look bad. It is a hard watch. This series is a hard watch. We talk about Indiana and Milwaukee being a hard watch. This one's a hard watch. I caught some of the games and I'm just like it's sorry. I should say Minnesota have been fantastic and solid and playing, I think, solid team basketball. Phoenix it's just so ISO heavy. Everything's just one of the big three make a play. One of the big three make a play. One of the big three make a play. Oh, Nurkic got an offensive rebound, back to the big three, and it's just ugly basketball. It just doesn't look good. They have no one that is willing to do small things for them. Grayson Allen, I thought was okay at that. He's been hurt, did his ankle and hasn't. I don't think he played 2 games and he's out today again in the game, which is going on right now. It goes, I mean, does this start the conversation, Pro, of this big three shit being in the rear view? Because you're starting to see more and more of these teams that are being successful. They don't go the big three route. Denver, I mean, you might say Porter, Murray, Jokic is a big three, but not in the terms of 3 max players from individual teams coming together to form this kind of monopoly of max guys. I don't think it works anymore because you need good role players. You know, Minnesota and Denver and these teams. All right, Boston, they still built that pretty much from the ground up. They got Drew in the trade, but I think this is a good thing in the realm of hopefully teams not going this route, but you gotta have good fits that fit well together. All 3, or at least Booker and Durant need the ball to be effective. Beal, not so much because he can be a bit more defensive orientated, but takes away a lot of his strengths. Those 3 are putting up okay numbers: 24 for Durant a night, 20 for Booker, and 19. But then the fall off and who's next in line? Nurkic hasn't been great. He's been 7 and 8 for this series. It's just an ugly style of basketball, and then you go to Minnesota, and it's just so balanced, and the ball moves, and they're all happy with their roles. You know, for as much shit as Gobert gets, he's at 17 and 13 with a couple of steals, couple of assists, 73% from the field. And then you've got Anthony Edwards with 28 a night, seven rebounds, 6 assists, playing really well. Towns in limited minutes, obviously with his injury, they're smoothing him back in with 16 and 10. Alexander Walker's been good with 15. McDaniels has 13. Conley been really good and solid for them, veteran presence, 12 and 6. Naz Reid with 10. So just really balanced, good team. And then you go to Phoenix, it's their big three that average double digits, and then it's a fall off a cliff. And it's just clunky. So much so, Pro, that it's already been leaked that Vogel's going to be fired immediately post this series. So we'll see if that's today in about 2 hours' time. If you listen to this podcast at time of recording, you'll probably already know about it. But I think part of him is to blame, but part of the blame also has to go to the GM and management of trying to roll the dice on this big three thing. And it's not like these three players, Pro, are young and are going to give you 5-6 years of longevity together to try and get a championship. They sold the farm, right? No picks, Trent, till
31.
Till 2031, Pro. So you're kind of all in on this roster. I think if you bring Red Owl back in to coach this team, they're not winning a championship, right? So it's in. Give me your thoughts on the series in Phoenix.
Well, let's just talk about Phoenix real quick.
To not even get one game, Pro, though, like if they're gonna get swept.
No, they're done. They're getting swept, in my opinion. I just think that it's just past the point of no return. We talk about it, previously in the podcast that they could keep it close. They might even punch him in the mouth, get up 12, get up 14. It's sort of like the Lakers leads with Denver, right? Like they'll get up in almost every game and then you'll just see it dwindle and they're just not going to have enough. It's sort of like if you ever saw the movie Perfect Storm and they thought they were out of the storm. They saw that little patch of sunlight and everybody was cheering and then that fucking shit just got swallowed up and then they spoiler alert, they all fucking die at the end and they just fucking get swallowed up by the storm. That's what the Phoenix Suns is. Now, I will say this. I don't think anybody complained about the trade when it happened. I think when they were making those moves to get, they had Durant and then to get Durant and then to get Beal. I don't think anybody cared about it. I thought everybody was behind it. Everybody was like, wow, this is big time. That these guys are going to be really good. Yeah, it might take a little bit of time, but also their bench needs to get a little bit better. But those guys are juggernauts. Like, I think everybody was sort of behind it. And then just like everyday life, now everybody's like, oh, it's the worst thing ever, blah, blah, blah. I agree. It was tough because you don't have a real point guard in the three guys. And then there's no real point guard to sort of settle things down. Everybody's sort of an offensive player. No one's really a playmaker like that. Durant's a good, makes good plays, good passes, Booker. But look, Beal was hurt a lot of the year. Their bench was up and down. They had to make other moves. They spent all this money. I think between those three guys, they're at like $140 million. And then they get the Grayson Allen extension. And look, you come in, as an owner and you come in, you try to get a big splash because you want everybody talking about you like you're smartest guy in the room. And they made the deals. Now, as far as the big three is concerned, I think the big three's fine. Not them, but having big threes are fine if you draft them. Look at the big threes in the past. Some of them were acquired. A lot of them were drafted. Golden State drafted. Golden State was drafted. San Antonio drafted.
I'm talking about just so we're clear, I'm talking about the acquisition of big threes, the strategic, I think teams are going to look at that.
That's the thing. Yeah, it didn't work for Brooklyn. Houston tried it on multiple occasions with stuff. They really couldn't get it done. Miami, Miami's gone to multiple finals, I believe, and they sort of acquired it.
Miami got it done. They got it done, but they got it done with Bosch, LeBron, and Wade.
But even their team that went to the finals, they acquired it.
Yeah.
LeBron, they never really had a big three. They only had the two. But yeah, I think it's hard, especially
Clippers.
You got to give up so much to get these guys. The Clippers tried it. They didn't draft it.
They're in it right now. Yeah, they're in it right now. We'll see.
Yeah, they acquired it twice. They acquired Chris Paul and they drafted Blake and they had all that, DeAndre they drafted. But it's tough, man. But Yeah, look at the other guys that really failed. Look at Brooklyn, who tried to do it, and they sold all their pieces. And now look at them. When you do these things where you sell the farm for these guys, and you trade all your picks and pick swaps, same thing with the Clippers did to Sam Presti. Sam Presti had Paul George and knew he wasn't going to win with Paul George. They tried it for a year or two, and it just didn't work. So what they do? He knew Presti, just being the guy that he knows, he is. They know that they weren't going to get Kawhi Leonard without Paul George. So they know that he could hold them over the coals for Paul George, which he did. He has 1 million picks, pick swaps, and he got SGA. So, I mean, that's a Red Auerbach move right there, to try to get all those picks, pick swaps, SGA, and you got a guy that wasn't going to help you really get far in the playoffs anyway. So, and I think you got to get the right guys, Bogues. Like, if you're going to get guys, you got to get the right guys that fit, the right guys that are going to sort of move the ball. And you're going to have a few of these young players that you draft, that you keep on your roster at the end of the bench. Sort of what the Mavericks had with like Dorian Finney-Smith and Kleber and Powell when they made the the Western Conference Finals run. You need guys like that plus your big three, which is really hard to get because you're going to have to trade everybody and every asset to get these three guys. And now you have you're going to be big time tax apron, and B, with the tax apron stuff, you can't sign and trade. You don't really get a mid-level exception. It's really hard to make trades. It's really hard to acquire players and make moves. You're just sort of stuck to what you have. So I think it's better to build it organically. But sometimes, like, look at the Houston Rockets now. Like, the Houston Rockets got a decent team. They got the Turkish kid, and they got Brooks, and they got, Van Vliet. But they're only going to go so far. So do you, like, say, okay, we're going to be, like, middle of the pack? Or do I trade all these guys to get a couple of big-timers that are unhappy in other places? And then, try to get a big two or big three? I don't know. I think it depends on the situation, but a lot of these big threes aren't working. I talked to multiple general managers in the past week about it, and they were telling me the same thing. They're like, nah, the big three thing's dead. Just because now the apron stuff. In the last few years, you didn't have the tax apron as much. You had luxury tax and all that, but you're really handcuffed to what you can do once you get to a certain threshold. Plus, you're paying out the ass in your luxury tax. So it is tough. As far as this series, it's been a dumpster fire. Anthony Edwards is averaging 21. You would have thought by watching him, if you didn't look at a scoreboard or a score sheet, that the guy was averaging 41. I mean, the guy, there's a lot of talk about him, about like what he brings to the game, how he dominates. Hasn't been, the guy's shooting 49%. 36 from three. I mean, 90 from the line. I mean, he's really taking it hard, taking it to him. Karl Anthony Towns been shooting it well. You had Jaden McDaniels has a couple of really good games, that one really good game in the series. And then the rest of the guys just sort of follow suit. For Phoenix, look, without Allen, those three guys, there's just too much pressure on them, to perform. And you would think, being the players that they are, but it's just not enough. Durant 24 a game, Booker 20, Beal 19, but just everybody else. Look, Gordon's hasn't looked good. Nurkic is just Nurkic. Eubanks is just a sparring partner. They just nobody else that could really step up for them. But again, like, everybody wants to complain, they got no bench and they got no bench. Well, to acquire Kevin Durant and fucking Bradley Beal, it ain't like you could just absorb them in your cap room. You have to give up any type of asset that you thought you had to get those guys. They won't get a draft pick until my fucking son's 30 years old and he's 5.5. So I just don't know. I don't know where they go from here.
Yeah, not sure. And Edwards is at 28 a game. I don't know why NBA.com has a photo saying he's averaging 21 on the initial page, and then when you click on the stats, it says 28 a game.
28, you're right. 28.
And then Durant, it's 24 on the stats, and then you click on NBA.com and it says 19.8. So get your shit together, developers at the NBA.com. We found a couple of mistakes for the multi-powered business.
Yeah, and also, Bogues, look, Durant's not going to get you a lot in so. Looking at their offseason a little bit early, Durant will get you a little bit of something, but for what you get back from Durant, that's not gonna get you anything in the short term. Bradley Beal isn't going to give you anything.
Well, that's my point, Pro. So you've sold the farm. If these guys were in their 20s, I'd get it.
Yeah.
I'd be like, you know what? It's a good home run play. Even late 20s, you're like, we're going to get them at least 3-4 years of their prime. Durant's what, 35, 36, Trent?
35, yep.
Beal, 32, 33 with injuries. Yeah. So you're like, and Booker's late 20s. So you sold the farm. You still got Booker, which was, you drafted anyway, right? So, you didn't bring him in. That's my point. And you've given up all these picks. I think what we're going to look at on the flip side of the big three is how does OKC do this next year or two? If they manage to get to a finals, win a chip in the next couple of years, maybe that's the route teams are going to, and those picks are going to become much more valuable. You're like, you know what? We're not going to do the big three with aging veteran stars. We're just going to run with what we've got, and we're going to try to get a superstar along the way. SGA, prime example, but we're not going to sell the farm. So it is an interesting push-pull thing to see where teams go. Now, saying that, if a team had an opportunity to get, I don't know, like Anthony Edwards in 3 or 4 years, of course they jump on it and sell the farm. So it's always that.
That's the thing.
That's always that.
Like
disgruntled star.
Yeah, you're sitting there and like, where are you going to go? Like Phoenix wasn't going anywhere with just, with Booker and what they had on their roster. They had to do something. And then they got Durant, and then that wasn't enough. And then they have to push.
Well, they made the finals with Chris Paul and Booker, man. So I don't know.
That's a good point. Fuck. I guess I'm getting old at 48. But I was listening to Bill Simmons the other day at his podcast, and he made an interesting sort of deal where, like, would you deal Booker for like McCollum, Trey Murphy, and multiple picks? And because he's the only guy that's going to bring you back value. And you keep what you have with the other two, and then you trade Booker, which will give you you could either do the whole Gobert deal where you just basically, take on another player. But the problem is it's hard to make trades. But if you could take a big salary guy that's going to be coming off your book soon and then 5 or 6 draft picks, or do you do it where, all right, we're going to still compete. We're going to have McCollum, Trey Murphy, and multiple picks. That's the thing. So it's interesting. And with Oklahoma City and the way they were built, it was just draft. And that's why these organizations, you got to be really careful of who, as an owner, who you hire as your GM in your player development, because you got to be able to identify talent, and you're going to have to develop it. And that's what Oklahoma City does. Look, in my opinion, I think Sam Presti's worth about $25 million a year to an organization. Because look, everywhere he's been, he won, and everywhere he's been successful. He's been in one place, but he's built up multiple teams that will have a chance to get to a finals. That's pretty hard to do, and that's tough. And then he brings in Chip England, and look at the guys like Giddey's getting better as a shooter. Isaiah Joe's a shooter. Holmgren's getting better with his shot. Like, all these guys are getting better because they got great player development. They got a great coach that the guy was a manager in fucking UConn. He was a D-League coach, and he brought him along, and now he's coach of the year. So they could develop talent. They could acquire it. And that's how you do it. That's the formula. Everybody I speak to, what's the secret sauce? What does Golden State do? What does San Antonio do? What does Oklahoma City do? What does Miami do? They have a fucking plan. They stick to it. They know what they're looking at for talent. They could acquire it. And now people are going to fucking try to acquire your talent. So you either develop all your talent, you just go move forward with it until you can't afford it anymore, and you got to start trading off smaller pieces, or you just start acquiring all these things. And I don't know, if I'm an owner and throwing in like 8 years of picks and pick swaps, I'll be thinking really hard about it. And also, before we go, Tim Connolly at fucking Minnesota. I mean, look what he did in his short time being general manager on 2 teams. He brings in Jokic in the second round. He builds them up to, from a laughingstock to a championship team. And now he goes to fucking Minnesota, and they're a team that could, maybe make a finals. And everybody was laughing about the Gobert trade, about giving up too much. And look what they've done in a short period of time. So it's an interesting deal.
It is. We'll watch that space and see how it goes. On to some news. Amazon and NBA reach agreement on broadcast deal in conjunction with ESPN. So that'll be interesting to see. The details of the financials haven't really come out. It's rumored to be in the billions per year. And rumored to be around a 10-year deal. How that all works with the app and whatnot is yet to be disclosed. Google's still interested in carrying NBA League Pass as an app. there's all these app wars going on now, Pro. I'm not sure if you know, even if you buy a TV now, there's certain TVs that don't have certain apps. It's fucking wild. Yeah, I didn't know that because I went out one day and bought a TV for my kids a couple of years ago, and then didn't have like Disney. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how do you get Disney? And then you're just like, you're in this kind of rabbit hole of trying to find TVs. And then I didn't realize some TVs don't do League Pass. So then you got to do it through Apple TV. It's a fucking nightmare. But anyway, that's the way it's all going now. Apps are the next big thing. So, okay, put your scout hat on, Pro.
Yeah.
NBA scouts think USC was holding Bronny James back. As per Brian, I've given him the nickname of LeBron James personal assistant, or PA, Windhorst. Bronny's entering the NBA draft and transfer portal.
Yeah, Windhorst has been carrying water for LeBron for a long time. And I just think that's just sort of what the media does, right? And that's his guy.
They've been holding him back. So hold on, he's going
to protect him at all costs. Look, I said this before when we talked about him as a McDonald's All-American. He wasn't even a first-team All-Conference in his conference, and the guy was a McDonald's All-American. Look, I understand he's going to have certain entitlement because of who his dad is, and he's a good player. I think if he developed, he could still play at USC. I think in 4 years, he could be a good player. He's a good shooter, but he's not this phenom. And that's the problem with these guys that have superstars as dads. Everybody looks at them and think that's the part of the gene pool they're in. And 95% of the time, that doesn't really happen, at the basketball end. No, he's not. He's a shooter, smart player, hard player, but he can't impact the game. He needs to play off really good players at the Power 5 conference level, or he can go down, which I think they say if he doesn't go to the NBA, he'll probably go to Duquesne. Duquesne's coached by a former high school teammate of LeBron's at St. Vincent St. Mary. And he'll probably transfer there if he doesn't stay.
Better spot for him though, right? Better spot. Like it's he'll play
Atlantic 10. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
But it's just like I always get this holding a player's being held back by a coach, and I'm like, okay, so you're telling me that coach had a stallion that he doesn't want to play for what reason? He doesn't want to keep his job. He's just doing it because the holding back thing is always like, okay, so you got a superstar you don't want to play. Just because I don't. This isn't back in the 80s and 90s of kind of maybe where Bobby Knight, Rick Majerus, these guys would give freshmen a fuck you. You're not playing for me till you sharpen up with certain things. That's not done these days. Coaches want to win now. So if you've got a guy that's supposed to be, no one's holding anyone back to that extent, unless there's huge off-court problems, which Bronny James doesn't have. But I just thought this by Windhorst was just horrible. Just
it's fake. No scout that's any good at all, unless they're coming off cataract surgery. No scout is ever going to say that. They might say, hey, look, he's going to be a good player down the line. I believe that. I think he could be a player. Plus, with all these 2-ways and Exhibit 10s, guys have way more paths to get to the NBA for at least short periods of time. Then, he could definitely be in that case. But to say that he's holding him back. Obviously, he's just trying to save some grace, save some face for LeBron and his son and draft status and things like that. I would just stay out of it. But, look, Windhorst has, made a lot of money off of that as far as being LeBron's guy. And look, I don't blame him, but it doesn't give a lot of credibility to you when you're saying that, in my opinion. I just don't think, unless he was just like, talked to 400 scouts until one guy gave him the answer he wanted, and then he was going to run with that. I don't know, but it didn't look good on that one.
Well, scouts with an S, so it must have been 2, Pro. All right, Jonte Porter, lifetime ban from the NBA due to betting on games. The league's investigation found that before the Raptors' March 20 game, Porter disclosed confidential information about his health status to an individual he knew to be an NBA bettor. Another individual with whom Porter associated and knew to be an NBA bettor subsequently placed an $80,000 parlay proposition bet with an online sports book to win $1.1 million, wagering that Porter would underperform in the March 20 game. I think that's the one where he left with an eye problem. Also, from January to March, Porter placed 13 bets on NBA games using associates' accounts. I believe that was when he was in the G League, and he was betting against the team he was affiliated with. That they're going to lose. Mm-hmm. Basically, the amount of money Jonte Porter made by gambling on the NBA was $21,965, amount of money Jonte Porter has earned in NBA salary from 19 to 24 was 2.8 million. So we all know what the bad decision is there. Look, you want to be harsh on these kinds of things. Lifetime, pretty as harsh as you can get. Surprised he wasn't given a chance to maybe reinstate, but he's going to be playing in Europe and maybe even over in the NBL. Just got to get the phone out of his hands. But you hate to see this for a young guy. He's obviously made a big mistake, and he's got to take his medicine. But also, pretty stupid thing to do. You know, the amount of educational stuff we have to sit through with NBA seminars about betting, and I'd imagine it's even worse now. If you didn't listen to one iota of that, then it's kind of your own fault in a way. And just to finish that off, man, the Porter family, Cobain Porter sentenced to 8 years in prison for killing another driver while driving under the influence. That's Michael and Jonte's brother. So they've had a horror run. You know, and rest in peace to the person that he obviously killed, and he's going to do his time, but not a good time for Jonte Porter. But give me your thoughts on the lifetime ban, correct?
Yeah, you have to protect. Look, you have to protect the brand. You got to protect the league, and the gambling thing. You can't be gambling on games. You know, you see it with Pete Rose with baseball and all that. You just can't. It doesn't matter how much gambling. You know, there's so much. It's just such a bad move. It's a bad look. I definitely support the lifetime ban. You can't be doing that because, like you said, there's a million seminars about it, and then it puts the league in a bad place. And now it's the scrutiny in the league. It's much bigger than you. And look, there are bums in this league that will make 40, 50 million in their careers by just sitting on benches. And I mean, you threw that away for 21 grand. I mean, yeah. It doesn't make any sense, and I totally stand by the lifetime ban. Hey, look, he's got to learn a tough lesson, and he knew. I mean, you knew that's not right. I don't care how young you are, you can't be doing that. It's against everything morally in the league. You just can't do it. And now the scrutiny in the league. There's rising scrutiny about the gambling thing a little bit, not too much. But it's getting there.
And what it's going to do is it's going to bring more scrutiny on players and more rules. So the NBL here in Australia, Pro, has implemented a similar policy to Australian rules football and the National Rugby League. Is they are meant to confiscate all player phones coming into the arena. So don't be surprised if that eventually becomes something that might happen in the NBA if this kind of stuff continues, because they're saying that critical information can be texted out. I mean, look, at the end of the day, a training staff member or coach can do it just the same as a player, but they're saying anyone in your traveling group needs to give their phones up for the duration of the game and the duration you're in the arena. Players obviously are fired up because their music's on there, their loved ones. What if your wife's pregnant? There's circumstances where you're allowed to have your phone if there's a family member that's sick or in hospital or pregnant wife and all that kind of stuff. But that's one guy can screw it up for everyone else, and they'll put in all these rules, which then usually go over the top because they have to, but that's just the way it is. Caitlin Clark, Nike endorsement deal, which spans 8 years, includes a signature shoe worth $28 million. Just for context, her salary in the WNBA will be $76,000. So Nike's paying her a good amount, and she deserves it. She's a prize of admission athlete. We don't need to get into that. We've spoken about that many times. Go through the awards real quick. We don't have to get into these too much, but finalists for the MVP, Doncic, SGA, Jokic, that's the right decision in my opinion. Tyrese Maxey, Most Improved Player of the Year award. I don't know about this one, bro. The guy was averaging 20 last season, and he's averaging 25 now. To get the Most Improved Player, you're kind of like, well, he was still pretty good last year in my opinion. Nas Reed, Sixth Man of the Year. This one as well, controversial. Malik Monk versus Reed, statistically. You got Reed, 12.3 points, 4.9 rebounds, 1.1 assists. Splits were 48, 41, and 77%. Monk, 15.4 points, so 3 points better, 2.9 rebounds, 5.1 assists, 44, 35, 83. I think Monk had better numbers. I think Reed got it because they were winning. That's my opinion on it, bro. And just finally, Steph Curry was named the 2023-24 NBA Clutch Player of the Year. Anything on those?
I like Nas Reed. I agree with you with the Monk, statistically. But Nas Reed, I think I agree with you too. It's the winning part. But I love Nas Reed. undrafted player, LSU, played hard, just one of those guys who grinded out in the D League, finally got a chance, and he's done well. Yeah, statistically, he doesn't really. I mean, I think Malik Monk had like a 50-point game or something like that this year, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, he really could fill it up, and he's definitely does some things. Then again, maybe you could say that scoring doesn't always go into it. And then with the Maxey deal, I agree with that. I think there has to be some ruling about if you're going to be most improved. Like if you're, I don't know if you do it through draft, if you're a certain status in the league, as far as most improved to me, it'd be a guy averaging like, 6 a game, barely playing, and 15, then ends up being the 6th man or 5th man and does well. But yeah, that's my thing. I think for the most improved is for guys that you don't think was going to be good and ends up being really good, in my opinion. So,
Maxey was already good. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, and I agree with that. Like Maxey's basically gone from star to superstar, so it's kind of not that big of a jump. I think generally single digit guys that go to double digits, I think are pretty much in the mix. Not 9 to 11, but obviously if you're 4, 5, 6 points, great summer of work, summer work, come back. And then you have your 15, 16, 17. That's a great improvement. But and then Dagenhart obviously getting Coach of the Year, which is also a pretty obvious one. I think we both agree with that one. But the Monk one, I think if Sacramento were actual playoff seed, not a play-in, I think he would have had a better chance. But it just doesn't work out.
The only reason they're not though is because he got injured. And
that's a fair point. Yeah, that's a fair point. Actually,
the record thing is like a result of him not playing. And he's the only dude to lead the league in scoring 2 years in a row and not win the award.
Off the bench.
Yeah. So, I get that point.
Who got it the year before?
Last year would have been Powell, wasn't it?
Was it?
Norman Powell.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Okay, yeah.
I think it was. I'm not sure.
That's a fair point. I mean, and definitely their downfall started when his injury happened, right? So, that's a fair point. But, yeah, I mean, Minnesota kind of number 1, number 2 seed all season, so that's probably why they sided with him.
It's a tough one, but I think that needs to be mentioned for sure.
Yeah, that's a fair point. Very fair point. All right, stats, useful, useless, pro. All right, entire 1980s, 3-pointers made, 19,042. That's the whole decade, bro. That's 10 years.
Okay.
That's 10 years if you don't know. Decade means 10 years.
Thanks.
So 19,042. This season alone, 31,221. Just for some context, useful or useless?
It's useful as far as, where the league is and where the game is. It's crazy, though, with those numbers. But it's funny, like, you look at those numbers back in the day in the 80s. Or did you say 80s or 90s?
80s.
Yeah, in the 80s, like, they might take 4 threes between the two teams. It's crazy, where you might get a game where it's 85 to 90 threes by both teams now. So, yeah, it's definitely useful just to see where the league is and how they value the three these days and how it's continuing to rise. Like you might see a league in 10 years that like has just threes and layups and very, very few mid-range. You might see teams averaging 45 to 50 threes a game. So yeah, it's interesting for sure. I think
it's interesting just because of the disparity, but the 80s, it's not like it was a priority. So, yeah, I agree with you. All right, Joel Embiid has failed to make a shot in the fourth quarter in 21.2% of his playoff games. Useful, useless?
It's useful. I mean,
basically a quarter of his games, he doesn't make a shot.
Yeah, lack of productivity in the playoffs as far as where his teams are, and that stat, in my opinion, pretty useful.
Yeah, useful when it shows. So they need him. They need him, whether it's legs, confidence, I don't know what it is. I think conditioning plays a part, and he's carrying a lot of load for them, no doubt, and carries them for 3 quarters. Just got to find a way. Maybe they get him a bit more rest earlier in games. I don't know. Get him an easy touch early, but that Ben Simmons was a scapegoat historically the last couple of years before he left. Now it's all on him. He's got to get it done. All right, Australia ranked number 1 globally outside of the US in average NBA League Pass viewership and watch hours over the 23-24 season, pro. Useful, useless?
So Australia watches more NBA basketball
outside of the US. Outside of the US,
outside
obviously.
of the US,
and the average League Pass viewership. So they've got the most League Pass viewership and watch hours are from Australia. Outside of the US.
You think Trent's got like 7 iPads going during the NBA playoffs?
No, you know what I think it is? I think people in Australia actually buy the app and don't illegally stream it. Whereas in China and India and whatnot, they're watching the shit illegally. Which is a good thing.
Thing.
Yeah, well, Australians actually buy the legit product, and I think for licensed NBA product, Australia's up there as well. I believe. I don't know. It's always top 2, top 3. It's a good thing. The bad thing is for those fans wanting an NBA game here, that's a reason why you don't have one, because the NBA looks at this and says, "Fuck, we're doing well there anyway. Like we don't need to go there to build our brand. We're going to go to regions like India and parts of Asia and parts of Africa where we want to build our brand." Australia's already built. They're already spending the money, the dumbasses. So maybe we need to, boycott the NBA League Pass for a couple of years and they'll get out here. But that, and just for the record, I lobbied to get an NBA exhibition game out here for a number of years when I was with the Warriors. That was always the subtle answer I got, was when I spoke to NBA people up high in the NBA, they said, we're doing well out there. We don't need a game out there right now. And it's a first world country. They pay for the authentic stuff. It's not on our list right now. So don't hold your breath, Australian fans. All right, last one, and then I got one for Trent. Highest to lowest plus minus this playoffs, pro. Alexander Walker plus 65. Kevin Durant the lowest, minus 64. That was pre today's game. In the whole of the playoffs, you wouldn't think KD would have the worst plus minus. Ant plus 53. Devin Booker minus 47. Rudy plus 52, Royce O'Neal minus 45, McDaniels plus 50, and Beal minus 39. So the big three are top 5 in plus minus for the playoffs, bro. Useful or useless? That's the whole playoffs, not just that series.
I would say it's useful. I mean, but I'm not a big plus minus guy, but those numbers are pretty, they're pretty big. But, I don't think Kevin Durant's killing his team. I just think his team's terrible, right in this series. But I would say it's useful. It's just, like I said, I'm not a huge fan of plus minus. But yeah, it paints a certain picture for sure. What do you think, Bogues?
Yeah, I think just because they got their ass kicked in the series, it doesn't look good. But to have all their big three in the top 5 in the worst plus minus is kind of telling that it's just not working. They need to move on from it, in my opinion. So we'll see where they go. All right, Trent, I'm going to give you, Pro, you can even chime in on this one. This is just player X for now. This is player X. Mm-hmm. So these are 2 seasons of theirs in the last NBL season. 22-23, 0 games started, 16.6 minutes a night, 7.13 points, 52% from the field, 43% from 3. So 16 minutes a night, didn't start a game, to 22-23. 23-24, 15 minutes a game, 1 minute less, 5.26 points, a little bit worse from the field, so 39% from the field and 33% from the field. Would you say those numbers are pretty similar or not?
Trent, what do you got?
Well, yeah, like...
Besides the shooting percentages, obviously.
I'd be stupid to say no. But yeah, they are pretty similar.
Pro, pretty similar?
Pretty similar.
Okay, they're Angus Glover's stats. This is a player that we have with the Sydney Kings. This is not a shot at him whatsoever. But there was a huge rhetoric around him being benched and not playing much this season and it's not fair and all this kind of stuff. They're the stats. The numbers don't lie. He averaged 1 minute less, started 3 more games in the season before, which was a championship year, of course. Started 3 more games because he started none the year before. Shot 13% worse from the field and shot 6% worse from 3, and his numbers only went down by 2 points a night.
Yeah, well, yeah. Like you said, the numbers don't lie.
So
if you're not performing, then...
But even so, the numbers, the minutes and there was 1 game where he didn't play, but there was this big rhetoric for the last month of the season around Angus Glover not playing, not fair, that's why the season's going shit. You go back and you look at the stats and the numbers are almost identical minutes-wise to the championship season, and it's just funny how the media can make a perception of something and blow it up and make it bigger than it is. And I got that sent to me and I was like, wow, it's a really similar thing, really similar numbers.
Yeah, I think that's just a general problem with NBL media is narratives are king. There's not usually a lot of statistics to back things up compared to when you look at these NBA narratives. A lot of them are backed up by like a ridiculous amount of statistics except for the Brian Windhorses of the world. But I mean, I would be interested to see the playoff difference because obviously in those couple of series in the playoffs, those championship years, I think
it was definitely great in the grand final series. He had a couple of games. There's no doubt in my mind, but there was a rhetoric swirling a couple of months even before the playoffs started this past season that he wasn't happy, he wasn't playing much. You know, the minutes were the same. It was just he was struggling early on in the season. There's no doubt he'll even tell you that. He was struggling to make it 3 for a long while, but the narrative was that it was, you'd think without looking at the stats, you'd say, all right, if you average 16 minutes a season before, he's probably at 8 or 9 or 10 maybe. Not the case, so kind of an interesting one.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It is a good one. All right, NBL free agency, real quick. Will McDowell-White announced he's gone overseas, which is interesting because he opted out of a pretty big pay packet from the Breakers. Most people thought that he had something promised from somewhere, but he's gone overseas. Geordie Hunter signs with the Southeast Melbourne, so a tough loss for the Sydney Kings. We wanted him back. One thing we couldn't do was the Japan out. He's got a Japan out. That can happen at any time, I believe. He wanted that with us. We couldn't take that risk to sign a center and, come August training camp, come November, middle of season, I want that out, I'm out. Sorry, bye. And then you're like, shit, like all the centers are off the market. That's why we didn't end up doing the deal, and Southeast have offered him that contract knowing that he could leave, and they're taking that risk. So good on them. Good luck to them. Good luck to Geordie. He was great for our club, multiple championship winner, and really saw his growth. We now signed Spurgeon from Bowling Green, I believe, over there in the US. Surprised we got him because he was offered guaranteed roster spots by multiple clubs. He's come to us as a development player with incentive to be a roster player in the future. So I think he saw the development path with us being a little bit better, which is a good thing. But I was kind of shocked that he took the non-guaranteed roster spot. So credit to him, because it means he's willing to come in and fight for what he's going to hopefully be given one day. So Rob Lowe back to United, Smith Milner at Brisbane, Elijah Pepper, probably the most touted college player right now, actually has Australian citizenship, was born in Victoria. We had him on our shortlist, ended up signing with Perth, so big get for them, probably the big name college player coming out right now. He averaged 20 a game last season, UC Davis. So actual big-time gunner, which is a great signing for them. That's kind of all in free agency. Shane Heal had the bulk of his lawsuit dismissed against the Sydney Kings and Flames, and I guess I'm part of that group technically, so that's all been thrown out, and now everyone can move on with life. I know our checkbooks are severely lighter now because of that whole process, but it's good that it's all been put to bed and Shane can move on, we can move on, greater and bigger things. Little birdie, there's an NBL club for sale, Trent. And I had someone I know pretty well in the US got it flicked on his desk that there's a team that's not exactly on the East Coast for sale. So it'll be interesting to see where that all goes. We've heard the minority or majority ownership of that club is for sale. So we'll be interesting to see where that goes, Trent. But I've got a good one to finish with. I've got the salary cap spends. Obviously can't release other teams' info because I get in trouble by NBL, but I can talk about ours, and I can talk about where we sit in the whole grand scheme of things. So you got the NBL, for those not aware, you got the salary cap spend. So that's not your hard cash spend. That's you might get an exemption for Aussie marquee, which only hit the cap at a certain amount. Everything over that is still a cash spend. You got Asian player exemption, Indigenous players, you got all that kind of stuff. Injury exemptions. I think Southeast was, their books looked really well because of the injury exceptions, because they had so much injury. So your number goes down severely. We had that a couple of years ago when Jalen Adams was out for a period. Your number goes down because you're paying him per game technically for the cap. Where would you have the Kings on, let's just say, salary? So including all the exemptions, where would you think the Kings would sit? 10-team league?
Yeah, I like looking at Hogue, Adams, everyone you'd have to be top 3. If just looking at the rosters and the names on a sheet of paper, I would say somewhere in that top 3. We
were 5th in our cap spend, and our cap spend was $2,042,000 was our cap spend at 5. So
that's very interesting.
Who would you guess would be above us, Trent? I can't.
Yeah,
deny or confirm.
If I had to guess, if you're 5th, Perth definitely have to be above you. United would definitely have to be above you. And that means probably Brisbane is above you guys, which is crazy when you look at probably Sobey and Baines.
Could be a few fairy tale Cinderellas in the top 5.
And then Adelaide.
Close. You're close. I can't confirm or deny, but you're close with some of them. I think you got one wrong, but
I think if the team that will be wrong might be Perth, because I do like they were having some money troubles or something. Like you hear early in the season, and then all the selling or rumors, etc. But it's really surprising that you guys aren't a top 3 spender.
Yes, that's always the rhetoric. The Kings always spend, right? Big market team, so that's wrong. Okay, now we move on to cash spend, which obviously changes because you don't include your exemptions and all that kind of stuff. Where would you have the Sydney Kings on your cash spend?
Let's go for
6. Sydney Kings are 6th for our cash spend, which was $2.9 million, 2.908. This is all the cash spends are approximate because but we obviously did our research on where we thought other clubs would lie, and we're quite shocked because there was a small market team that was above us. But if we're 6th, you got to do the math. All right, pro. Surely you've done your homework this week. Either fact or fake news.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I got 3 on one player.
Oh wow.
Your feedback on it. I was just going to ask one question, but you know what? I sort of fanned it out to 3 separate questions. First of all, there's a lot of talk about changing the God in the NBA as far as, it's a lot like the old school where like Jordan and these other guys sort of left the league and then all these young players sort of took over, right? So there's a lot of talk about the young guys taking over for the guys that like in their 30s, like a Durant, Curry, and all these other guys. Anthony Edwards is going to be where this is centered around. First off, based off what he's done this year and, Team USA last summer, what he did this year in the regular season and what he's doing first round in the playoffs, do you say that Anthony Edwards is a top shooting guard in the NBA?
Top shooting guard as of today.
You would say that Anthony Edwards is the top shooting guard in the NBA, fact or fake news. SGA would be considered a point guard, not a 2 guard. So I'll give you the names, all right? Anthony Edwards, Booker, George, Mitchell, Jaylen Brown, Bradley Beal, Cade Cunningham, CJ McCollum, James Harden. Those are sort of like the 10 names I would put in the 2 guard sort of position. Would you say that Anthony Edwards right now is the best 2 guard in the NBA? Fact or fake news? You would say he is. Fact. Fake
yeah,
news.
fact. And then double down on it because of his age. Yeah, I think, fact. I'll go fact on that one.
Okay. So now you put him in another category. Now you put it in the category of the franchise type players that are high 20s, early 30s, or high 20s to high 30s. Would you take Anthony Edwards over all of these guys based on age, production, talent, all of that? So
high 20s, low 30s, you mean, right?
What's up? Low 20s, high 30s. Yep. I know. High 20s,
low 30s.
To high 30s. So like Curry's mid 30s, right? But
okay.
Then you have LeBron and stuff like that. So I'll just give you like 10 or 12 names off the bat. Luka's not on the list, obviously. And, I won't even put Jokic on the list, but I'll just put the other guys on. So you've got Paul George. All right. You got Durant, Curry, George, Bradley Beal.
Oh, you don't even have to read them. If you're starting a team today, as far
Giannis,
as that superstar,
I'll throw Giannis on that list. 28. I will not throw Jokic. It's not fair because of the MVP stuff. I will put Joel Embiid and Anthony Davis. Would you take Edwards today with what he is now and what he can be over all of those guys today?
Yeah, fact. Of course, age-wise, Giannis is the only one, but you've probably only got another 4 to 5 at a high level for Giannis, the way he plays.
Mm-hmm.
Edwards, you got 10 to 15, and Edwards Edwards kind of hasn't hit his ceiling yet, neither, and he's playing at this high level. So, fact, I would stay with Edwards.
Last one right now. Who are you taking? Would you take Anthony Edwards? You would take Anthony Edwards over Jason Tatum today and
Ooh, that's a
going
tough one.
forward.
How's Tatum?
25, Tret? 25, right?
I'm
26?
going Edwards, even regardless of ages. Don't even worry about it. I'm going Edwards. Fact. I'm
Bogues.
going Edwards. I think Tatum's Edwards has kind of been a little inconsistent at times, but he's still super young.
Yeah.
I take Edwards. I mean, no disrespect. Tatum's an absolutely phenomenal player.
Yeah.
But Tatum still gets in those periods where he goes, disappears for a little bit, comes back. Like game 2, we saw him kind of, not have the best game. But Edwards, I think all the hype's warranted. I think that he's got a lot of attributes of a absolute superstar that's going to be in the MVP hunt for a long time, and I think the poise is the most impressive thing with him. You don't really see him get overly sped up. You don't really see him get overly kind of rattled with things, gets to his spots. He's got to turn around on both shoulders. And you know what's impressive about this season? He's had a couple of dunks, but he hasn't just head down, try to dunk on everyone this season. His game's flowed into jump stop, make the right play instead of trying to, I guess his first year or two, he was so athletic and can use that every play down where there'd be a lot of offensive fouls and trying to dunk on people from outside the paint. This season, he's still dunked on people, but you can see his growth in I'll just pull up and shoot this 10-footer. I'll just turn over this right shoulder because, he's not trying to overly force it. I've definitely noticed that. And that's a big part of player growth in the NBA, and any athlete is, not just being one-dimensional and using your athleticism your whole career. So I think the fact that he still has that athleticism but doesn't need to overly use it so much helps with injuries, helps with longevity. So I think that's my argument for going towards him.
Yeah. It's funny because I never try to compare anybody to Jordan or Kobe, and there's been a lot of that talk in the last few weeks. I don't think it's fair to anybody, but I'll tell you what, outside of the old school players that are still in the league, like the Durants and such, besides Luka, and Jokic, obviously, with Edwards, he's got the closest thing to I don't know what you would call it, competitiveness. There's a lot of competitive people, but that hatred towards his opponent and just sort of would rip your throat out. I don't see that with a lot of, even Victor. Victor's an unbelievable talent, but he just sort of happy-go-lucky, goes do his thing. There's nobody Durant's like that wants to he wants to kill you, but obviously he's getting up there in age and whatnot. That's why I think that he's a little better than Tatum. Tatum is an unbelievable talent and ridiculous talent. But this guy, I don't know, man, this guy continues to come at you offensively, defensively. And he's an interesting study, as far as that. He's a competitive dude, man. Oh, by the way, did we talk about Jokic's brothers?
I had it on there, but
Javiter?
Yeah, Strahinja Jokic. At this point, surely fans know, I'm just not going to say anything to this dude. And if he says something to me, but
what happened, Bogues? What?
Obviously, they were talking shit to each other, and then towards the end of the game, something happened. He just jumped down and punched him in the face. I'll tell you what, though, the fan took the punch like a champ.
Yeah.
He didn't flinch. So congratulations to him. There's probably, I believe there's been some lawsuits paid out previously, but you're suing Strahinja, not Nikola. So just word to the wise, there's probably a strategic effort to make sure that guy has no assets in his name while he's living in the US. But
dude,
it affects visas. It can affect visas. If he gets charged, that can affect visas of coming back into the country, right? So there's a lot of ramifications of this. What the NBA does, I'm not sure. But at this point, surely the NBA and Nikola just say, let's just get this guy courtside seats and not put him up with the regular punters that are on the drink and being, who knows whose fault it was. We weren't there. And this guy's ready to fight. Serbian dudes, man, at the drop of a hat, they fight and they drink shots afterwards. But at this point, the NBA's got to make an investment, and so does Jokic, that your MVP's family are ready to brawl. Let's put them in an area where they can't brawl. But yeah, crazy.
Pretty amazing, man. It's if you're that fan, there's certain hills you want to die on. That's not a hill you want to die on. Like, those are two big dudes.
Even
man.
if you didn't know they were Jokic's brothers, you're just like, yeah, I'm just staying away from the dude with the neck tat and the slick back hair that's like 8 steroid bars. Like,
I told you the story with Dirk. Yeah, I said it many times in a podcast. Like, during the game, I think he didn't cheap shot, but he like nailed Jokic. This is early on in Jokic's career. And there are two dudes I'm just watching. At least one. I don't know if they were both there or not, but there was at least one. And he's like courtside, not courtside, but like across from our bench, center court, like 5 or 6 rows up. And he's ready to like jump on the court. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And then Jameer Nelson, I was talking to him at halftime. I was like, dude, who is that fan? He goes, oh no, that's not a fan. That's Jokic's brother. He's like special forces. Like
ready to go.
Do not mess with them. They had to move him like multiple times that year about having issues with referees and other players. So I would fuck with Dirk the whole game. Like, dude, he's eyeballing you. And Dirk is like, he's half laughing and half not, like, because he's a scary dude. Like, from across the court, even with all the security, you're still scared.
Yeah, so, it was like when the whole Miami Heat fight when they had Morris. He was like trying to go down there. Fight people. But yeah, guys, they've grown up, and a lot of friends that I have in Croatia and whatnot, they've grown up and seen shit that would, like absolutely destroy your childhood. So this is normal. Oh, you want to fight? Okay, no worries, let's fight. Like, it's just like, it's like, no problem, we'll fight. We'll fight.
But
and
he
then
did take it.
Oh, but the fan, he took that like a champ. Chin went back, back forward. Well, what happened? So I don't know if it's maybe the special forces punch wasn't as good as it should have been, or whether this guy just had a concrete head. But it was interesting. The NBA, surely the NBA, nothing's come out, I don't think, about it. So I'd assume this would be one that's being done behind closed doors. I don't know what the fuck moment for the NBA and Denver and whatnot, but I know Jokic, Nikola's kind of a floaty, happy-go-lucky kind of guy. Like, we used to see him at the Olympic Village in 16, and he'd be walking by himself, not a care in the world. Like, almost, I love that almost too, like man. He's got like a music on in his head when he's walking around, just like not carefree. So I think the brothers are overprotective of him, because I think they know that he's a warm soul, a kind soul. Yeah, he'll fight, but not really. And I think they probably know people fuck with him when they were kids, and they were always the ones you had to deal with if you fuck with him. So I think that's that kind of. It feels like it's that kind of dynamic.
The commercials he does with Peyton Watson are hilarious, though. By the way, have you seen it? The Jokic and Peyton Watson with their poolside.
I haven't seen that one. No, we didn't get those yet.
Oh, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny.
And then he does the other. What was the movie that he was promoting?
Guru and the Minions.
Yeah, all the scarfing and shit. People like pretty good marketing.
Dude, they had a meme of him dressed up as the guy, and then all the Lakers starting 5 as minions. It's fucking hilarious, man.
And by the way,
people behind this meme.
By the way, the AI stuff's going to get pro eventually. The AI stuff is. It's going to get not just pro, it's going to get all of us. That shit is getting wild.
Scary.
And all that stuff I've been sending you, I knew it was AI, but it was hilarious.
But no, of course. But I'm just saying, we get done by NBA Central sometimes with 12s. Like, the AI shit is starting to get like, and what I said last week, like, now if you do anything and say something stupid, just blame it on AI. That wasn't me, it was AI. I didn't make that remark about that lady. No, that was AI. It was obviously an edited video. Hey, it's a crazy time. Scary. Yeah, so. Anyway, that wraps up this series. Hope you enjoyed all the playoff stuff. We'll be back in a couple of weeks to wrap up what will be a second round of the NBA playoffs. Thanks.
Bogues, by the way, I took another Australian under my wing.
Who?
Luka Ace Nesteski from Harvard University, a 6'11" kid from Australia.
I don't know him. He's at Harvard, is he?
What? Harvard, 6'10".
I don't know him. Can he play?
Yeah, not bad. Spend a couple of days. He's going to be the guy's at Harvard, though. I mean, come on, man. It's a great life. But yeah, he's 6'10". He went to IMG Academy. He was a footballer for I think he's only been playing basketball for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
But he's 6'9", strong kid. He's going to be good. He's going to be pretty good. And I think he's going to work out back in Australia. He hit me up on email off my website. I literally called him within a minute. I just looked him up. I called him, and he starts laughing. He just came up and spent a few days. But yeah, another maybe a Sydney, maybe a future Sydney King. Just trying to give you a little bit
nice
of
young guy. Continue to keep us under all the salary cap restrictions, unlike those other clubs that just overspend all the time. You know?
University of Sydney. He played league his whole life, and then the last 3 years he's just playing basketball.
A bit tall for league, I reckon. His legs will just continuously get cut up by some of those Islander boys. All right, Pro. We'll see you in a couple of weeks. Let us know how you go.
Later, guys.
Later.